Welcome to Nature Sketch Crate's Heartleaf Skullcap Go Out and Sketch instructional video. In this video, I'll be showing you how to sketch a plant similar to the Heartleaf Skullcap. First, make sure you have all the materials you need before you go out to sketch. You can head out to a garden, park, your backyard, or paint a plant inside your home. This month's subject, Heartleaf Skullcap, was chosen due to its spooky name. Its purple and white coloration and shape also reminds me of skeletons. The plant I'm sketching in this video also has a spooky name, Creeping Charlie. It is purple and white, plus it is very similar in structure to the Heartleaf Skullcap. Remember, this is just a sketch. Take your time, observe and paint. Don't get too caught up with the details, and relax and have fun. Apply what you learned from your step-by-step lesson to create this sketch. Let's get started. So the first thing you want to do is figure out how you want to arrange the plant on your paper, the composition. So you can kind of look at your plant and see what you might want to do and what you might want to include, like how many leaves, what flowers, include the seed pods down here, the buds, and how much of that detail do you want to have in your picture. So I got around at this, and I kind of like maybe a couple of leaves and one of these stems here with the flowers, buds. And I probably won't include all of those. And then I also have this one, which is small, has a nice arrangement, and it has another little stem coming off here, starting with some buds, and then some seed pods and the buds, so it's including all the different elements I want. I might just go ahead and cut it off since this is my plant. I'll trim it pretty far up on the plant, so that I have plenty to work with. Having this plant cutting instead of painting from the plant itself will make it a little easier for me to demonstrate how to sketch this plant. So the first thing I'll want to do is figure out how I want this plant arranged on my paper. Do I want it to be like this or like this? Do I want it kind of coming from the side, from the top? And this plant is kind of, the flowers come down on the plant, so I think I will want to do it, well, they come down and then it goes back up, so probably like this, to kind of represent the plant itself. And you can just start going ahead and tracing your image, maybe the shadow, the flower itself, and that'll make it easier for you. You don't have to include all of these flower buds, but maybe just a few. And you can just kind of press it to your paper, and if you didn't take a trimming, you can just put your paper up behind the plant and do the same thing. And just go through and trace right around it. Now, this is going to be a little bit bigger than the plant itself because you're tracing the outside of it. But it'll give you a really great place to start. And then you'll have to draw it in. It's very similar to the step-by-step in which you transfer the drawing and then painted it. So go through and trace around each part of the flower that you think you want to include. This helps with sizing, so you don't have to guess. And you can make little marks where this calyx ends and where the corolla begins. Maybe make a line for this flower coming down if you want to include it. I'd like to include maybe that one and this one. It's pretty fun. And let's see. Then I want to include some of these seed pods. One of them fell off, but I'll probably just add one in there because there was one. And there's another one here. I'm just going to make it simple and not include this second piece coming off here with the flowering parts. And then again, I'm going to simplify, because it's just a sketch, my personal study of this plant. I'm going to simplify this a little bit and just draw maybe, it has a lot of leaves coming off, and pull these down. I'm just going to add these 2 leaves here. And so I'll move the other ones out of the way and kind of press them down so that I can add that into my picture. You could alternatively do a side view like this. I guess I could do that and add it in. A little bit more of a natural position for this. And I'm kind of just tracing that and adding in what I can. And then I want to show this entire leaf here. So I'm going to press it down on the natural view and just draw around all those edges. And now, pull this to the side. I might keep a couple of these because they fell off when I was moving things around, but I am going to include those little seed pods. And I think I'll start with the leaves. Put this back into that position and draw it in. So the first markings were really light. And the next mark I'll make is just a little bit darker. Not too dark, not pressing too hard, just a little bit darker. And keeping in mind again that this is going to be a little bit bigger than my actual leaf since I did the outside. And it's not going to be perfect, it's just going to be similar. I'm not going to take too much time to go through this. And the view will change a bit, so just have to kind of do my best figuring out where those lines were. It's okay to erase a little bit if you need to. Just don't get carried away with it and spend all your time erasing and redrawing, because this is not meant to be perfect. It's just a sketch, just a fun little observation of this plant. Little stem coming in there. And I decided not to include any of these other leaves coming off, just to simplify this drawing. It's your drawing, so you can choose whatever you want to include. I'm going to do the other leaf, and I did it flat, so that makes it pretty easy. Doing it at a profile here at the edge on this leaf was a little bit more difficult. And keep that in mind when you decide what and how to draw the different parts of the plant. It's best to demonstrate a couple different techniques or positions. So I drew the leaf start here, and I am starting here, so I'll just keep that in mind. When I'm drawing this in, it's not going to go all the way out that way, but the ridges are going to be about at the same place. But just a little bit more interior. Then I can draw the lines in a little bit while I'm drawing this. And I'm not going to draw all of them in, because I'm not trying to get an exact this plant, just the representation. And I'm going pretty fast, so it may not be exactly where they're at, and I'm just kind of adding a few things in. In certain lighting, I can see more of these lines than others of these veins. Right, I like that. And then I could, if I want to represent where these other things are stemming off these leaves, I can go ahead and put a little stem in each pot if I want, so I can add those in. And then pull this. This leaf is actually coming down here, so I'm going to put that this stem here, coming from behind, and erase that a little bit. So this stem actually comes from the bottom here, and that's a bit smudgy from the eraser, but that can all get fixed once I color in with some paint. So I'll move on up this. Can move on up. I did like this particular flower here, so I might start with that one. And I'll just decide how much time I want to spend on this and what level of detail I want to add in and accuracy. And the more time you spend on it, of course, the more detail you're going to get out of it. And just kind of move this plant around since it's cutting. It's not going to make it anyway. Draw in the little parts since I have a basic idea already. And then I'm just going to do kind of a real light drawing, and I have some sizing ideas here. I didn't really get a great tracing of this flower, so I'm going to, since I'm drawing it again, I'm going to retrace it. I'm going to lay it down here to make it super easy for myself. So I can just kind of retrace that particular flower now that I know that's the one I want to add in. And that'll make that way easier, faster. Pull it to the side, and you can work on each bloom individually like that if you like, and make it simpler. I'll add some details in, maybe noting the speckles, and then draw in some of these tiny details in the calyx there. These are kind of getting in my way, so I got rid of them. Go. And this looks a little bit bigger, so I'm going to make it bigger. Then working up the stem, next I'd like to include one of these seed pods here. So again, bringing it over to the side, make sure I can draw it. And there's a leaf here. And I can draw tiny stems to indicate this piece that's coming off if I like, that I did not decide to include. And bringing this stem up, and then there's this little seed pod here that I can draw. So this little top, a delicate bottom, very tiny simple little pointy object there. And working up again, I can include each one of these little points coming off and continue up. And if I like, I can include this, but I think the next part, I'm just going to skip this one and go on to this one because it's not an exact botanical illustration. I am just getting an idea of this plant. So I'm not including everything, just my observational sketch. Getting more of the character of the plant down than anything else. And including what I find interesting about this plant. And then, so I traced it again, and now I'm going to redraw that right here, keeping it close by and in that same position as much as possible to make it easier on myself. Putting in some dots just for reference. Tiny little dots on this plant. And pull it to the side. The next one is this one right here. I did a pretty decent job tracing it before because it's the only one right here on the side. Made it kind of easy. And it's exactly across from this blue that I just drew. So I'll make sure to note that by drawing it in. And then bring this rest of the stem up from here. There is another flower coming up here. I will probably, I might not include it. And your sketch might be a little bit bigger, might be a little bit smaller, and that's fine too. It's just a sketch, getting an idea of the plant. But this lower lid has those extra pieces there that you can see, which is nice. And then there's this great little bud here that I would like to include. So I'll work up the plant. Put in this little bud. A very simple structure and shape. I'll probably add this to show the flower from a forward-facing view, because there is one flower coming off. And it's close to that bud, so I'll just draw the basic shape first. Upper lid and the lower lid. And then put in, looks like this flower is coming off the side. Just to show all three, I might add that in. Kind of coming off here. And I could retrace it again. I'm going to decide just for speed, not to demonstrate that again, just to go ahead and draw it in freehand. The more you practice, the easier it is to draw and the faster you'll get, and the more freehand you can do. I find it's good to mix up both of the freehand and the tracing. I have quite a bit of experience in time As a beginner, I highly recommend to trace quite a bit, but to also try to practice freehand. This top flower is great in profile view here. So I'm going to do that one too. And I'm going to just end this stem probably right after this flower. Add this little bud on the left side, on my left. And then add, again, just freehand. Starting real light. I already have the sizing of this flower, so it makes it even easier to, because I can space it on these other buds. I'm not pressing too hard, and again, not worrying about getting it super exact either. So it's a little bit bigger than the flower itself. And it has I like where this image is at. I'm going to add the common name. And the scientific name. And maybe I will add a little bit more of the stem. I think it'd be interesting to add just a little bit more. Clean it up a little bit with my kneaded eraser, and not too much because I want to use that as a guideline. And these red marks are from the plant, so they'll just be on there. I can just kind of think of it as a special additional element, or make a little note on the side about it if I want to. I think I'll just leave it like this though. And I have all of my paints from my step-by-step lesson already mixed up. What I'll do is I'll just add some water to revive those. So I'll probably start with the green. I'll just test that out on my little piece of scrap paper. Looks pretty close. Dab it off onto my towel to make sure I don't have too much. And go ahead and add it in to those leaves. And the stem has a little bit of this color under that magenta color. I'll be using a little bit, mixing a little bit of magenta for this. The quinacridone violet will work perfect for that color. A little bit on the end of the buds. The calyx and these seed pods. If I missed any green parts, I can go back and add them in later, but that works pretty well. So I will now add a little bit purple while that dries to the flowers, and it's just really minimal on these flowers, so this won't take long at all. Dab it off on my towel and test it out. That looks pretty good. Dab it off some more because I probably need it even lighter than that. And just try to start really light, getting it into these tips of these buds, and not worrying too much if I get any paint on the outside. It's just going to be similar. It's just a sketch. Just putting a little bit on the edges here, and then we'll add some spots too at the end. And I beat up one of these flowers a little bit, so it's starting to wilt a little. I can still use it for reference. It's like mostly the tips. Just a little tiny bit of this violet color. And then I'll take my quinacridone violet, shake it up, and use a tiny bit. Just go ahead and add one drop. I don't think I need to mix it. It's pretty much the same color as that stem already. We'll test it out. Picking up a little bit, testing it out on one of my papers here. I'm actually adding some green to it. So some of the green I mixed, I'm just adding a little bit of that to the quinacridone violet. Maybe a little bit more quinacridone violet, less green. And when mixing colors without a formula, just kind of go back and forth, adding a little bit more, a little bit less. I think that looks like the right color. So I will add it to the stem. Make sure I don't have too much to make it too dark, but the stem is this darker color. And the green is dry underneath. But all these little stemmy parts are this darker color. Make sure to get the flowers. It doesn't seem like they're completely red, but they have a little bit of this reddish color on them. And it seems to get lighter up near the upper bud area, so I won't put quite as much in there. I'll put a little bit darker down here. It's okay to add that so the wet area to make it darker. And these leaves are dry. There's just a little bit on the leaves in these veins, so I'll add just a tiny bit into there. It's like a hint of color. And now that the purple flowers are dry, I'm going to go ahead and add some tiny little dots. So I'll get some of this purple color with not very much water added. And I will twist the tip of my brush, help it get a nice fine tip. And then lightly add little tiny dots. And then here as well. Very speckled at the end, but it's a very light, tiny speckle. And they're bigger than on the flower itself, but that's okay. It's still being able to represent that speckle. And then the edges of some of these buds are a little bit darker too, so I'll add in a slightly darker color through those. And some more speckles on all these upper and lower lips here. Lastly, I'll add the leaves are dry, so I'll add a drier, darker, more concentrated green. Test it on my paper first, a little bit darker than that. These light leaves are really dark, but you do want to show where the light is hitting, and you can turn this again to kind of see for reference. You can see where it's a little bit darker in some areas than the others, and where the light hits, it's a little bit lighter. It does not have to be exact, just a representation. Pick up a little bit more of that paint and do the same with this leaf. I'm going to look at it and say, hey, what areas are dark, and just kind of working in those areas and trying to leave some of the other areas light for contrast. It could be broken down into even smaller sections on this leaf, but we're just doing a quick sketch, so I'm not going to worry about it too much, just getting an idea of this plant. So, there you go. And then making sure I got enough on all of the green areas on the calyxes, and it looks like this is the only one I missed. I'll get that one. Maybe a little bit more there. And I think that's good for the paint. So next we'll move on to adding ink, and I can start some of these dry areas up here while the leaves dry. So now, just like with our step-by-step, I'll start adding some ink lines. I'll start with the 005 Black Micron. I'll just outline, draw over my common name here. And the scientific name. And then just go through, and I can refer back to my plant and draw in the little details. I'm not going to get too carried away. Go ahead and draw some of those in. And you might find it when you're working with something this small, it might be helpful to get a magnifying glass out as well. Here I'm redefining some of the lines. You don't have to stick with your original ones. Just go ahead and draw over it and make some new ones. So I have all of the main lines in with the 005. This is a very delicate flower, so it's important to put those in first. And now I can add some deeper lines with the 01 black micron. Starting with the scientific name. And then just kind of going through and seeing where some areas have some deeper shadows. So anywhere that's a little darker, you can add maybe mostly on the underside or the bottom. The light might not be hitting, or on the right side where the light might not be hitting. Anywhere that might need kind of a little bit darker. So it's such a little delicate flower that you won't need a whole lot. Just anywhere here might not get light. And that'll add some more contrast to your image and make it seem a little bit more three-dimensional. And give it a little bit more depth. And if you make mistakes like I just did, just go ahead and own it, draw it in, just make the other side darker, and that'll create that contrast. It's okay to make mistakes. It's just a sketch. It's not meant to be perfect. Usually between all the little leaves, it's going to get a little under these serrated edges are going to be a little bit darker. Not all of them. A lot of these we get light hitting them, maybe just right in the cracks. And that's good for the 01 micron, so I'll move on to the 08 black micron. And I'll go through and just add very small amounts. Now right here I need a much thicker line to contrast with this line that I drew that I shouldn't have. Oh, that's fine. And now it looks like it fits, and to make for consistency I'll just add a little bit darker on some of these lines. So now it looks a lot like I meant to do it rather than a mistake. And just add a few just for consistency throughout, just a tiny bit, because this flower is so delicate it doesn't need any huge deep lines. It's not in my opinion. This is your drawing though, this is your sketch, so if you think it needs a few darker lines, you should add them in. And maybe a couple on this leaf here, just to bring it all together. Lastly, I'm going to be careful not to smudge this because ink stays wet for a little while. So I'll probably use a paper to protect my image from smudging while I write this common name in with my 08 micron. And I could have done that when I was drawing the plant to prevent these little dots, but I like them there. Now, I only added the common name and the scientific name, but you can add any kind of observations that you might have about this plant or the day. If you did observations about the plant, you can make little notes and then little lines to whatever parts of the plant you want to talk about. If you want to make observations about the day, you can just write some notes in on the side. My day is a rainy day, and it was a little busy with some yard workers and some barking dogs as well, and I could put all those notes about my day right in here. I'm gonna leave it just like this, but this is your sketch, so you make it yours by adding whatever you like. Great job observing your world, and keep practicing.